we are headed down a rabbit hole. I'm pulling us out, boys. I'm pulling us out.
All right.
We're gonna we could talk about OU in the SEC and what USC can be. We could talk about it for forever, but conference championship weekend, Andy, and it all gets kicked off on Friday night with the Pac-12 championship game. Oregon and Utah. We just saw these two teams play a couple weeks ago, and we saw Utah bully Oregon. I mean, are you expecting anything different, or are you expecting Utah to do the exact same thing to the Ducks?
I'm expecting the same game, and Oregon's going to have to prove different. Now, we've seen Oregon be different. We saw Oregon do to Ohio State exactly what Michigan did to Ohio State. So they have it in them, but they were just, I mean, they got their butts kicked completely by Utah. So until I see them controlling the line of scrimmage, not getting just bulldozed when Utah has the ball, I refuse to believe it, because Oregon, since that Ohio State game, it's like they can't ever seem to get out of their own way. You know, they shouldn't have lost to Stanford. There's no that was, I know there were a lot of circumstances that went against them in that game, but look at what happened to Stanford after that. There's no excuse for losing that game. And then not getting up to play Utah when they played them the first time. They were in the playoff mix. They had a win in hand against Ohio State. All they had to do was win the rest of their games, and they're in the playoff. And they completely lay an egg. Like, I get if you go down there and you lose a squeaker to Utah, but if you go get your ass kicked when you have a chance to make it to the playoff, I don't get that.
My question is motivation. And you hit on it there. You've got a chance to go to the playoff and you get stomped. And, you know, let's face it, whenever you get pushed around, physically embarrassed the way they did, it's hard to bounce back from that mentally. You add on top of it that, okay, yeah, you got a chance to win the Pac-12, but, you know, I don't think the conference championships and even bowls hold any of the weight they used to now that there's the college football playoff. So what do you think, like, just mentality going into the football game? Where do you think they stand?
I mean, it's still for the Rose Bowl. So I think that's still a pretty nice consolation prize and something to fight for. I mean, I'd rather fight for that than the Alamo Bowl. No offense to San Antonio. They got great tacos there.
Just unnecessary ricochet great shot barbecue right there, man. Completely unnecessary.
But, I mean, it's the freaking Rose Bowl, Gabe. Come on.
Just unnecessary. You know, you damn well know OU's going to the Alamo Bowl. How dare you, sir?
Or the Cheez-It. He could have thrown Cheez-It Bowl in there.
But
the Cheez-It Bowl.
In that Pac-12 champ game, who do you think's got the advantage at quarterback? Right? We've seen Anthony Brown. Like, it's like Anthony Brown's good has been like, wow, okay, look at this guy. He's got the athleticism, but Cameron Rising, he's kind of steadied that offense, man.
Anthony Brown's good, though. You get for like 2 to 3 series a game, and then you get other stuff the rest of the game. Cam Rising has been very consistent since he took over. And really, I do wonder what Utah looks like if Rising's the starter all season. If you don't have the Charlie Brewer time as the starter, they might not lose to BYU. We might be looking at a little bit different situation for them. But since they made Cam Rising a starter, and it's weird because, you know, like Kyle Whittingham's gone through offensive coordinators like Spinal Tap drummers, and other than Tyler Huntley, they never seem to find like the right guy at quarterback. But they really have the guy at quarterback this year.
What do you think the interest level is going to be in the game? It's Friday night, and it feels like it's been the forgotten game, except for just a handful of years when maybe one outcome of the game would send someone to a college football playoff. Outside of that, really hasn't had a whole lot of meaning to it, and it's on a Friday night.
The two fan bases and degenerate gamblers and me. That's pretty much it. I think that's who it's going to be. That's all.
Yeah, I plan on watching that one. All right, let's get to the Big 12 championship game. Baylor, Oklahoma State. We've seen these two teams play, right? And Oklahoma State completely controlled the first matchup between these teams. Baylor could not run the football against that Oklahoma State defense. But People. Have you heard about Gary Bohannon's status for this game at all? I can't get anything from anyone at Baylor.
It does seem like they are being pretty coy about that, which that leads me to believe that we may not see him. And if we don't, I have very little faith in Baylor to win this game. I don't have a ton of faith in Baylor to win it if he does play. I think Oklahoma State is playing great. I love watching that defense play. Brock Martin and Israel Antwine and Brendan Evers. And then the Malcolm Rodriguez has just been awesome, like heart and soul of the defense kind of guy. And I'm enjoying this defensive renaissance. I like a high scoring game as much as the next guy. I don't want the games to be 3-2 like that Auburn Mississippi State game in 2008, but I like it when a defense can control a game. And you've seen Georgia do that this year. You've seen Oklahoma State do that this year. You've seen Houston do that this year. Cincinnati does it all the time. I enjoy that. I like there being some variety there. So I think, the Oklahoma State offense has been good enough good enough to good, depending on the day. And if you get good for the Oklahoma State offense and the defense is what it normally is, Baylor doesn't have a chance.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. What do you think of Spencer Sanders? The majority of his career has been an absolute turnover machine. A handful of games into this season, he started to kind of figure out his role, it looks like, and be smarter with the football, take way fewer risks, just kind of distribute it on easy plays to the playmakers, let them do their thing. How do you think he kind of stacks up nationally with some of the teams that are remaining with the ability to make the playoff?
I think he's fine. I mean, the taking care of the ball, and I wonder if that's just confidence because the defense is going to get it back for you. You don't feel like you have to do too much, but you're right. You don't have a lot of those no plays from him anymore. It feels like everything's under control. And I feel like his internal clock as well, when there's pressure and something breaks down, he seems to be a lot better at understanding when to take off running and where the sticks are. And he just keeps drive moving. And it's been like watching him kind of grow up as the season's gone on. But I mean, you guys would understand better than me when you got a D like that, or you just try not to mess it up for him, right?
That's right.
That's right. They've been, and the one thing about their defense, you look at it, and Ted and I have talked a lot about this on here, but man, they just don't have any weak links. Like they don't have any bad players on the field.
Mm-mm. They're old as hell. Like it's like a BYU defense. Yeah. But that makes a difference. I try to explain to people, like, you guys remember when you showed up in college and you're like 18? I was 17. I had to have my mommy sign the permission slip to walk on. And like Florida had this dude named McDonald Ferguson who was 26. I don't know if he'd been in the Army or what his deal was, but he's 26 and bench press 500 pounds. He was D tackle. And like, I'm up against him first week and I'm like, oh my God, this is an adult and I am a child. Like, what is going on here? And so when I see a defense that is loaded with 22 and 23-year-old people, I fear for what happens to the offense.
Yeah, it's they're solid across the board. And I don't know that Baylor gets enough credit for how good their defense is. Now, obviously, with Bohannon possibly being out, it may not matter. Like they would have had a really hard time moving the ball anyways. But their defense is solid too, man.
Yeah, you could have a Big Ten West game breakout.
Yeah,
you could have like an Iowa-Nebraska game where it turns on a
you're not bad if you just turn and hand it to Abram Smith all day long. That's pretty good offense right there.
That is a pretty good offense. If Bohannon can play, I do think that does give Baylor a shot, just because he is dynamic in the run game as well, and you have to worry about him even if you got a bunch of grown ass men. You got to worry about him. So I hope he can play, because I think I would very much enjoy watching that game if Baylor has a chance. If not, it may be watch until the end of the first half and and Baylor has like 3 points and you realize Oklahoma State's just going to pull away. Like I remember watching that Oklahoma State Texas Tech game, and Oklahoma State's offense took a little bit to get going in that game. And it's like, okay, maybe Texas Tech's got a shot. And after a while, you just realize they're not scoring. They're just not.
But then you hang around to see if they can get the shutout, or at least, that's kind of,
yes, that's exactly what I
my
did.
feeling. It's like, okay,
that's exactly what I did.
Let's see how bad they're gonna actually beat them.
I will say when we saw that Baylor defense up close, like that defensive front, they're better than people think they are, with Ika and Hall, and then Terrell Bernard and Doyle like in the run fit, and Petrie coming from God knows where on every other snap. Like, they're fun to watch. I mean, Aranda was a name that was thrown out a lot, right? Are you surprised that it seems like he's content? I don't know if that's the best word. He kind of fits Baylor, like just a low key kind of where he can just do his thing.
Well, and Baylor's a good job, and Baylor has tons of money. So Baylor will give you what you need to succeed. Like you don't need to feel like you need to go somewhere else to get your resources. I would imagine he probably would have liked to get the USC job, but he's not going to get it over Lincoln Riley. And so if you're going to stay somewhere, Baylor is a great place to stay. And think about how good a job Baylor is, because after the Brile stuff, we assumed that they would fall off a cliff and we wouldn't see them again as a competitive program for a long, long time. But they built up that infrastructure very well. And you've seen Matt Rule bring them back, and you've seen Dave Aranda bring them back. And
they've been killed and resurrected 3 times in the last decade.
There may be something, there may be a Baptist joke there. I don't know. But it is interesting, because I thought after the Brow stuff that, they'd go back to being what we remember Baylor being for decades. And they just haven't. They had stuff in place, that the stadium's awesome. The facilities are good enough. They kind of realized, wait, we are near tons of really good players. They can just drive to us. We can get good players. We can compete for players. And I think Aranda can make them a competitive program in the Big 12 for a long time. I mean, it's funny because everybody poo-poos what the new Big 12 is going to look like after Oklahoma and Texas leave. From a competitive standpoint, I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be a lot of years where like 8-9 teams have a legit shot at winning the title, and I think that'll be fun.
I think it's awesome. I think you're right. I think every other job in the Big 12 got better whenever OU and Texas left for the SEC too, because everyone could see everyone sees a window to the playoff, which is my last question on this one.
It's got to expand first, but I think it will.
Right. Oklahoma State, if they win this, are they in? Is it that simple? Win and you're in?
I think so. The only weird thing is does Alabama hang around if they lose to Georgia? Do they get into 2? I just don't think they do. I don't think the committee's going to put them in. Now, I think if it's Alabama versus a 1-loss Notre Dame, a 2-loss Alabama versus 1-loss Notre Dame, maybe. But I think Oklahoma State, if they win this game, they're.
What if it's Oklahoma State against Cincinnati?
Ooh, that's tough. Cincinnati will have the best win. Oklahoma State will have more quality wins and the much better strength of schedule. So I think Oklahoma State would probably have a chance. Like the committee cares who you beat. It's just, it depends on what year do they care
who you are,
who's the best team you beat, or well, but neither one of them's a brand name, like a super brand name. And both of them will have really good wins. It's just that Oklahoma State will have more good wins.
Right.
Cincy has one good win, but it's a really good one.
Yeah. I think Oklahoma State's, I think they're closely linked, right, to what happens in the SEC championship game. And
yeah, they need Georgia to win. I think that would make everything easier for them. Yeah. And I think Georgia's going to win. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I don't think Alabama's going to be thinking it has much of a chance late in the game.
Alabama. Okay. Let's talk about that game. I still keep looking at it and being like, oh my gosh, Alabama's almost a touchdown dog. Like Alabama is almost a touchdown dog. It's almost hard to believe.
I was a little surprised they weren't. I thought if you'd asked me going into the week after the Iron Bowl, after the Georgia Tech game, what's the spread going to be? I'd have said Georgia by 7.5.
Right now, I've got it at 6.5. Georgia minus 6.5. And it took Bama 4 overtimes to get by Auburn. And you look at the games,
and Georgia didn't even sweat against Auburn.
No.
And that game was also at Jordan-Hare with Bo Nix, not with TJ Finley.
And you look at the games where Alabama's like really struggled offensively. It's when they couldn't run the ball, right? And that was against Auburn. That was against A&M in the game that they lost there at Kyle Field. Their offensive line, I mean, Andy, there's no way they can block this defensive front from Georgia, right?
I don't think so, unless they just play the game of their lives. I just don't think it's going to happen. The only time I've seen an offensive line that didn't look like he could handle something like this, that just played an incredible game, was 2018 when Clemson played Alabama for the national title, and their offensive line played a near flawless game. But I just don't see this. I don't see how, because Jordan Davis is going to take up 2 people at least every time, every play he's on the field. You know, you're going to have to find a way to get an angle, you know, and try to down block him. I mean, you're not going to move him. And then that leaves, like, Nolan Smith is going to be blocked by one person, which is unfair. Nolan Smith, the #1 recruit 3 years ago, one person. If they bring Nakobe Dean, there's one person to block it. Maybe. Or maybe there isn't. Maybe somebody turns the wrong direction. I mean, like, it's not fair. This Georgia defense is so low. And then Jalen Carter is probably the better, you know, gap shooter on that D line. He's the one you'd worry about in terms of interior pass rush. Although Jordan Davis can move too. Like, you've seen him run down quarterbacks and running backs. It's pretty unfair.
You like conspiracy theories?
Love them.
I got a conspiracy theory for you.
Go for it.
Here's the thing that I hate about the college football playoff. Is a lot of times in the championship game, the conference championship game, you have one team, like, let's take the Oklahoma State Baylor game, for example.
Yep.
Baylor has no chance of making the playoff. If they beat Oklahoma State, they cost themselves money.
Yeah, they hurt the league. Yeah.
Yeah. The payout for going to having one of your teams go to the playoff, like, you cost yourself money. So it's like the same thing with Alabama and Georgia. If Alabama beats Georgia, the SEC is guaranteed to get 2 teams in, and you have a really good chance. I mean, you don't guarantee yourself, but you have a really good chance. You've doubled your odds to get to the national championship game. I love thinking about this.
Does the phrase 2nd and 26 mean anything to you, Ted?
2nd and 26. Tell me.
The Tua throw.
Well, that was the down and distance when Tua threw to Devontae Smith to win the national title in overtime against Georgia. Do you recall Jalen Hurts coming in and saving Alabama's butt in the 2018 SEC title game, and one of the dumbest fake punts ever called? The Justin Fields, please don't transfer, fake punt. Spoiler alert, he transferred anyway. No, Georgia has to beat Alabama to get that monkey off the back. Like,
they got to eliminate.
There are so many demons that need to be exercised in this game. Like, Georgia wants to beat Alabama by 1 billion if they can. And so, yes, I agree. In a lot of other circumstances, you'd be like, well, I mean, you could do like a handshake deal. Not this one. Like, for Kirby Smart's mental health, Georgia needs to win this game by 1 million if it's possible.
Yeah, we'll see how that one's officiated. We'll see how that one is officiated. Okay, looking at Georgia.
Georgia's like, why are we getting called for a false start? Nobody's even moving on each.
We're not even on
offense. On every play.
Yeah. you look at Georgia's offense, right? Stable of backs, Stetson Bennett doing a really good job managing the game, using his athleticism. But aren't we all just – I just want to see Will Anderson ruin Stetson Bennett's day. Does that make me
Will
a bad
Anderson
person?
can win the Heisman. Will Anderson can win the Heisman Saturday. If Will Anderson has an Ndamukong Suh type performance Saturday, he will win the Heisman. He might win it anyway. And probably, I mean, I think he deserves to win it based on the season he's had. But if he has like a 4-sack day, he's winning the Heisman. The thing is, he may have a 4-sack day and they may still lose 28 to 14. That's the problem. This Georgia offense is explosive. It's efficient. And everyone's like, oh, Stetson Bennett. No, Stetson Bennett's actually the best quarterback to deal with Will Anderson, because you have JT Daniels standing there like a statue. Will Anderson going to tee off on him. Stetson at least can move a little bit and get away every once in a while. But the thing everyone is forgetting about Georgia, their best offensive player has played like 6 snaps this season. That's George Pickens. He tore his ACL in March. He played a little bit against Georgia Tech. You may see him a little more. And it may be a case of if they need him, you'll see him. I'm not sure they're going to need him. Like they found weapons, and this Alabama defense has not looked impenetrable. They gave up 29 to Florida. What do they give up? 46 to Texas A&M. Auburn moved the ball a little bit. This is not the Alabama defense that we're used to. And then Georgia, I think what they found in Brock Bowers as a true freshman, I think they thought they were getting that from Eric Gilbert, and then Eric Gilbert didn't end up playing. But Brock Bowers gives them a compliment to Darnell Washington on the other side. I mean, they can do so many things with 2 tight ends on the field. It's a nightmare. It's a matchup nightmare for defenses in the run game and in the pass game.
They have a ton of big humans, man.
Why every time Washington just floats out and plants himself at the sticks and just boxes somebody out on 3rd down, you're like, who's supposed to cover that? Like, it's 3rd and 5. All Stetson Bennett's got to do is get it within, 5 feet of Washington. He's going to catch it.
What's the chances Alabama gets in with a loss? Because, I mean, you look at it, it's not outlandish that Baylor beats Oklahoma State. It's not
Iowa would have to
outlandish.
beat Michigan, I think, and Houston would have to beat Cincy.
That would be like runner, but I don't think any of those standing on their own are outlandish picks.
No, they're not. They're not. Michigan, I think, unless there's some weirdness, crazy special team stuff, I don't know how Iowa scores on Michigan. That's the problem. Right. I mean, they're a pretty solidly built team, and it feels like they can run the ball at will. Now, Iowa's gonna be tougher on them than Ohio State was. It's not going to be as easy to gain yards on the ground as Ohio State made it, but the field position situation in that game, unless Iowa's punter just has the game of his life, Michigan's going to have some short fields.
I totally agree with you, but I feel like a lot of people are like me, waiting for this thing to have the fieriest, nastiest crash at the end of the season you could ever have for Michigan. Like, you're in, it's there. Beat Iowa, and that's it.
That would be so sad after what they did to Ohio State.
I agree, but I don't know what it is, but it's just cooked in that Michigan. I'm waiting on it to happen.
I know what it is. It's how you feel about Jim Harbaugh. So this is how your brain thinks.
Yeah. I just, the way Michigan is built, what they do travels. Like it makes it hard for them to lose a fluky game. That's the thing. So again, not entirely sure how Iowa scores at all, unless it's blocking a punt and covering it in the end zone.
No faith in Spencer Petras. He's back, baby. He's back there to throw it around.
Well, he better be back. When he went to the Nebraska game, I was like, what were you doing? This guy can actually throw the ball, which seems different.
First of all, when we talked about the SEC championship game, we didn't even talk about Bryce Young. He's good, but back to the Michigan Iowa.
But back to Spencer Petras.
Yeah, back to how bad Spencer Petras is. Now, Goodson's a good back. It's not like I don't think he's an elite back or anything, but man,
I want you to watch some Iowa, Gabe. I want you to watch some Iowa and tell me if they had a back who would more aggressively run north and south instead of trying to stretch every play out toward the sideline, they would have a 2,000-yard back this year.
They got the best center in the country. I know that. I've watched
that
a lot
guy's
of
awesome.
them.
Tyler Linderbaum is awesome. Seriously, they're running wide zone, and the backs take that to heart, man. They're like, we're gonna make this as wide as possible. Even if a lane forms, they don't hit it most of the time. Now, Goodson did hit it at the end of the Nebraska game and put it away. But against Michigan, you have to hit it when it forms or you're dead.
You have no idea how much money I would pay for Oklahoma to do some of the things that Iowa does in their running game. Like just running the simplest concepts that have been around for centuries now.
There will be a new OC.
Oh,
perhaps you can bribe that person to install.
I'm so glad I don't have to pretend like those long developing gap scheme runs are good play designs anymore. Thank God. I was at my wit's end, man. But okay. Michigan, man, do we talk about Cade McNamara enough? I feel like when you talk about an efficient game manager, I know some people hear that term and they think it's negative. It's not. Like, he hands it to Haskins and they do.
I think if Cade McNamara had not come out of the Michigan State game, because they've been sprinkling in JJ McCarthy at times, and I realize he did make a really good touchdown throw in that game. But if Cade McNamara doesn't come out of that game, they win that game. They're undefeated right now. I think he's done a really good job. And I'm all for, like, I think it's a compliment when we're calling a quarterback a game manager, because that means he does exactly what he's supposed to do, and he's not making mistakes that cripple his team.
And it means they win a lot of football games, right?
Exactly. We never say that about teams that can't win. Yeah.
Right. So Michigan, like, how do you think they match up with, like, and we don't have to spend much time on this, but I'm just curious, like the Georgias, the Alabamas, like in any of those teams, they got if they get in, they got a shot at it.
Yeah, I think they'd struggle to score against Georgia, but I think they score in Alabama, and I think Hutchinson and Ojabo get home against Alabama. I think they're in Bryce Young's face a lot, so I think that would be a pretty fun game. Michigan is good. They're just straight up, like, you don't kick Ohio State's butt like that if you're not good,
right?
So I would put them. Georgia's really the only team I don't feel like they would be able to be really competitive against.
To me, Michigan just feels like a worse version of Georgia. They want to play the same way. Defense is good. Georgia's is better. Offense is kind of similar. What they want to do when it comes to running the ball and their play action stuff, it's kind of like Michigan's just a worse Georgia. So I would love to watch that game. I would, but okay, this is not a game that I don't know how many people are going to watch the AAC championship game, but
it's going to be the most fun game of all of these.
I don't think people realize that Houston's won 11 games in a row, right?
Yeah.
And Texas Tech had a hell of a comeback in the opener. I remember it because I was watching it.
Yeah. Houston's played one bad quarter all season.
Yeah, and they're 11-1 coming to this game. And Clayton Toon's kind of throwing it all around. And Nathaniel Dell kid is having a year for them at wide receiver. But Cincinnati, that is a physical football team. It seems like Ford is back healthy at running back. Ritter's playing some good ball. He's maybe not the guy that I thought he was.
Two corners will lock you down.
The Gardner is everyone. The guy that everyone says is going to be a first rounder, but Kobe Bryant's the one that's on all the awards lists. So I'm just confused. But
I was confused too. I was like, why didn't they put their best corner on those lists? But
is there any chance Cincinnati loses this?
Yes, there is. And I mean, you've seen Cincinnati play tight games against Tulsa. You saw them mess around for a half against Tulane. You've seen games where they looked vulnerable. So this is the type of game where they might. And this is definitely the type of opponent that could beat them. Now, I will say, when they've played the teams in the league that have a little more talent, UCF, SMU, they've shown up and they've kicked their butts. So I think they will not sleep on Houston. They're well aware that Houston's good. They're well aware of the stakes of this game. So Houston will have to play a near perfect game to beat them. But Houston's played really well.
Yeah. I guess the only thing I think of with Cincinnati is I think they probably feel like they win and they're in, and that may be true, but God, there's probably so much talk and hype surrounding the playoff. And I know Houston, for most people, has been like maybe the most overlooked team out there, but it's in their conference, so they've been watching them. But I just wonder, these seem like games where one team is watching ESPN to see where they're ranked and see if they have a chance. The other team is going in to just try and ruin a season and finally get someone to talk about them. A lot of times those can be bad games for the favorite.
Oh yeah. I mean, think about that backyard brawl between Pitt and West Virginia in 2007. I mean, Pitt was a mediocre team that year, but it's a rivalry. It was a rivalry game, and they wanted to ruin West Virginia's season. And I know Houston wants to crush Cincinnati. And remember, Houston's going to make a New Year's Six bowl if they win this game. They will be the highest ranked Group of 5 team because they'll jump San Diego State. They're behind San Diego State right now, but if Houston beats Cincinnati, they'll leap in the rankings. So they will make a New Year's Six bowl. They have something to play for too, not just being the spoiler. So I would expect Houston to play its best game.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you. I'm actually pretty excited about that one. All right, last one before we let you go, Andy. Is there any reason I should watch the ACC championship game? They're both 10-2,
Yes.
but there's give me the reasons.
To see if the offenses combine for 1,200 yards and 120 points. That's the reason. They're gonna light this sucker up. I mean, Kenny Pickett and Sam Hartman are going to throw a lot of touchdown passes on Saturday, and it's going to be fun to watch as long as you don't like too much defense. But after we've watched Georgia, Alabama, and Houston, Cincinnati, we're going to need a little offensive palate cleanser.
I mean, it's going to look like the greatest game ever played after Michigan, Iowa, and Baylor and Oklahoma State.
Well, I believe you'll have both options with Michigan, Iowa, and Pitt, Wake Forest running concurrently. So if you love defense, you just go stay on the Big Ten one. If you love offense, flip over to the ACC. But yeah, you're going to see the ball in the air a lot and the ball in the end zone a lot.
This is my prediction. Michigan, Iowa is going to finish a full hour ahead of Pitt, Wake.
I think Fox is just be sprinkling. Fox will be hitting the commercials button. Like they're going to be calling people. We need you to buy another ad because we can't not compete with this game. We can't have this game run another hour and a half.
It's usually like, I think 9 commercial breaks and a half for a big game like this. They'll probably make it like 13 or something.
Oh yeah.
Andy, you're the man. We kept you too long. I apologize for nothing, but should be a fun weekend, man. And let's hope OU has not hired a coach since we started recording this. So we're all safe here, boys.
I think we're probably safe for the rest of the night. In their basketball game, they're finishing up their basketball game right now. So they'll finish that, and then they'll turn back to the business of hiring a coach.
Yeah, the Sooners are currently up 6 with 6 minutes and 24 seconds to go over the Gators.
Let's go.
Suck it, Staples.
Oh, Tyree Appleby may have another bomb in him. He did it to Ohio State last week, so we'll see. The listeners will already know what happened.
I hope you're wrong. You're the man. Thank you.
Good stuff.
See you guys.